Hello, hello, hello. This is PubShorts episode 78. Time is on my side. I hope it is, Tony. My name is Dr. KK. I'm the innovation officer at Trinca and Inago, and I have with me who definitely has time on his side, as well as a
I
bunch of series.
wish. I realize as I get older, time is less and less on my side. But thank you, KK. And what a great title for a song, for an episode of Pub Shorts. Those of you who haven't attended this, watched this podcast before, I'm Tony O'Rourke. This is Dr. KK, head of innovation at Inago, and I'm head of partnerships here at Inago as well. I look after relationships with publishers and with research societies. But in this particular uh, uh, podcast, KK and I talk about how the things that are affecting research communication today, whether it's research policy, technology, research integrity issues, anything that might impact on the work of the researcher and the way research is communicated. And this episode is called Time is on My Side. Well, you ask, why is it called Time is on My Side? Why is it named after a song that's nearly 60 years old by the Rolling Stones? Well, what we're trying to do today is highlight how publishers and libraries are racing to streamline access and respect researchers' time. That's the one thing we're all short of is time.
Right.
That include things like Rights Link from CCC, the Get It Now service, AI-powered portals, collaboration tools. We're going to explore how efficient delivery and next-generation workflow tools can put time on your side. Great pun in today's fast-moving scholarly landscape.
Oh, Tony, you should have been a professional talk show host. I mean, the way you introduce these episodes and these song titles, always
It,
make
it's
make
always, it's almost as if I've got a script.
it's almost as if. And Pup Shots is being streamed live on YouTube, and you can watch all the previous episodes. And Tony recommends that you take a day off on Friday and
Yeah.
watch all the 77 episodes in a single sitting, maybe with a cup of tea or maybe a couple of cups of coffee, or another beverage of your choice on YouTube. And it's available as a playlist. And you can, if you want to let us know what you thought, you can either drop a comment on YouTube or let us know on any of the social media platforms. Search for Inago or Pop Shots, or write us a snail mail. No, a regular mail.
No, don't write a snail mail. They will never get anywhere. Write a regular mail. You can contact me at tonyo@nargo.com,
Yeah.
or you can contact either of us on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and please let us know, and because we have a lot of stories to cover, so I'm switching directly to the first story, Tony. So this is a press release by the Copyright Clearance Center, CCC, Triple C. Triple C introduces expanded rights link author services for scholarly publishers. So what is this service? It aims to automate promotional offers and publication charges for authors. And the author highlights the need for publishers to adapt to the changing market dynamics, and CCC or Triple C is introducing new capabilities at the SSP 47th annual meeting, which happened, I think, a few weeks ago in Baltimore, USA. So did you get to hear about this, and what are your thoughts on this?
Um, Anything CCC does is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're a globally respected organisation that wants to make sure that the rights of the author and the publisher are being protected. So this is another, I think, really useful initiative to ensure that when there are any promotions that are taking place, that they can be clearly communicated from the scholarly publisher to the researcher and to the reader.
Right. A quick aside, Tony. Anything that CCR does is also worth listening to, you think?
A CCR.
Yes. Credence Clearwater Revival. Okay. Anyway.
Oh, right. No, okay. Yes. Yeah, there's lots of things. Proud Mary. Nothing to do with CCC.
All right. Talking about another new press release by CCC, Triple C or CCC makes Get It Now article delivery service available to academic libraries by the EBSCO Discovery Service. So the libraries can access journal articles through this discovery service, and the service offers an alternative to interlibrary loans by allowing article purchases.
Yeah.
This discovery service provides advanced search capabilities and accesses. It provides access to full text content, so it makes the life of a researcher who's accessing a library to learn and discover new concepts and novel research very helpful. Something similar to what we offer with Inago Read.
Well, it's what's similar to Inago Read is the EBSCO Discovery Service.
Right.
Get It Now is just a means of accessing the full text that they find within the EBSCO Discovery Service. I think the thing that surprises me about this story, first of all, great that they're making it easier for researchers to get full text. The two things that surprise me, one is that interlibrary loan in the 21st century still exists. The physical process of photocopying an article, storing that article, capturing the photocopying and then sending it and asking the author to destroy it within a certain period of time, a physical photocopy. Many years ago, many of the rights organizations had allowed for electronic interlibrary loan to take place. And that was licensed by publishers. So I suppose this is the sense it's a natural development from that process, so they can get it within their discovery system. Do you know how discovery systems work? Yeah.
Yep.
And that the whole point about discovery system is that it will tell you as a user, what do I have within my institution? What can I access? And so it allows the research library to make most use of its own collections. But increasingly what it does is highlights what it doesn't have. So, by allowing the Get It Now process, what you're doing is building in a facility where they can quickly get hold of content. And all the thing that needs to be managed internally is how then to fund those purchases, whether it's funded by the library, whether it's funded by the researcher, by the department, or whatever. So no, it's great. It's great. And if anyone's interested in sort of discovery services, can I urge you to look at Inago Read, which is a literature discovery tool, which will allow you not just to understand the current literature, but kind of related material to that literature.
Right. And one comment that I had vis-a-vis the interlibrary loans, I think it could be a digital loan as well, just like how a digital...
Oh, no, it absolutely is a digital loan. I'm just saying historically, the interlibrary loan used to be print, and there has been digital interlibrary loan for some time.
Right.
But what this is saying is now the Get It Now service, which is kind of an embargoed service, I believe. You can get the service, you can get the article straight away rather than waiting for 30 days or 15 days or whatever the rules that might have been in place at the time.
Right. And the next story actually is is something that I've been meaning to pick your brain on. This is titled "Collaboration is Critical to the Future of Society Publishing," something that I'm not as familiar as I should be, but let's see what the article says and I'll pass it over to you. So society publishing, as per the article, is facing a lot of challenges, and many societies still see publishing as a core of their mission. Both print and digital formats are being used, and revenue from journals is declining for over 50% of the societies. Larger societies are more financially stable, but AI presents both challenges and opportunities, and open access is increasing content volume but not revenue, and strategic partnerships are crucial for sustainability. And these are 7 critical insights. I think I've listed them all. So you have been around the block, as I've said this many of the time, but also you have a deep knowledge about how society publishers work as well. So what are your thoughts on the future of society publishing, considering the points that I've listed?
I absolutely agree with all of those points. Where we are today with read and publish deals is that we're in a situation where libraries typically have no more money than they had even 10 years ago. There's increasing demand to have access to content. There's increasing pressure on those smaller societies to at least to protect their income. So the very best all these read and publish deals can do, if they're lucky enough to be part of those deals, which of course many small societies can't be because they're not big enough to be on the radar for some of these deals, is maintain the revenue that they've been generating, but to provide much broader access and actually much broader rights to what you can do with their content. So it doesn't surprise me at all. And that's why we're seeing so many more journals moving towards the larger publishers, including larger society publishers, to take over part of that publishing role. So they might still look after peer review and the content that's going through, but allow all the commercial activities to happen within the publisher. And because then what will happen is that the publisher, if they're doing their job correctly, will guarantee them some stability, at least in the income that they earn. But I can see it's a huge threat, and I think we're going to see society starting to either, at best, maybe merge with other societies, or at worst, close, unfortunately, because they just can't sustain or close their publishing activities because they just can't sustain them.
Okay, I'm going to switch to the the non-screen share thing. So I'm going to ask you a question. So we offer several technologies in terms of automation for publishers, and we offer to all kinds of publishers. So in your opinion, would such technologies benefit society publishers more in the context of what we are discussing?
I don't think they'll benefit more necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the challenges that the commercial publishers face are different from the ones that the society publishers face. I mean, typically, I mean, this is a bit of a generalization. For example, society publishers don't always struggle with peer review invitations, for example, because they're a society, they've got a membership that feel embedded and somehow indebted to that society. They feel a sense of ownership, so they have less problems in terms of finding reviewers than perhaps, let's say, a commercial publisher might. But the exposure they've got in terms of maintaining a platform, paying for a platform, paying for distribution, paying the salaries for specialist publishing staff are not insubstantial.
Right.
And I think that's part of the challenge for some of these smaller societies, is how they can maintain that model and maintain that responsibility, which they see as a core responsibility for their society, in a financially sustainable way. And I think it's a struggle.
Right. So would you agree that a customized, maybe scaled down solution, especially keeping in mind the cost, would be a useful thing for society publishers?
I think it's a useful solution for any type of publisher.
Right.
I think if a society is working to any scale and they're doing any form of checks against content or language checks against content, and they're working with editors and they see that content volume increasing, but they don't necessarily want to see the staff costs increasing, right, there may be tools like ours can help them in terms of managing that increasing workflow.
Right. And if suppose publishers, even society publishers listening in, where can they find more sort of information?
You just have to do a search for either Trinket.ai or Inago reports on Google, and you'll get a link to me, or contact me directly at tonio@inago.com.
Excellent. So moving on to the next article, Tony. This is from the STM Publishing News. It's a news article. So it's about Silverchair. Silverchair expands AI playground to Scholar One manuscripts. So the AI playground allows experimentation with AI tools in publishing, which is something that I guess publishers should sort of experiment with more and more to see what fits. And this initiative by Silverchair will help streamline the manuscript review process. And the expansion aims to save editors' time and reduce editorial bottlenecks. And we are talking about all kinds of checks, including integrity checks and everything. So it is another example of sort of a solution for publishers to scale up and obviously have automation that will help us flag things like research integrity and maybe automate and improve efficiency vis-a-vis peer review. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and you can't understand the importance of this, really. Or understate. Sorry, not understand. You can't understate the importance of this. Silverchair acquired Scholar One, I think it was last year. And Scholar One is one of the two leading manuscript submission systems in the world. I mean, I don't know what the percentage is. Probably the majority, over 50%. I don't know. It might be wrong, but a large proportion of submissions that are sent to journals each year are either going to Scholar One or to Editorial Manager. They're the two biggest, although there are many others, of course. So it's not surprising that they've expanded their AI playground to include Scholar One manuscripts, because Scholar One has been criticised in recent years for sort of a certain lack of technical development, although there has been a huge amount going on in the background at a publisher level. But Silverchair are nimble enough and have got the skills to be able to take the technology to another level. Right. But yes, and one of the things you'll find, for example, moving forward, is that a publisher can go to Scholar One and they can plug in the tools that they need as part of their screening process. So they might be able to plug in Inago reports as part of that process and access those reports within the Scholar One manuscript environment.
Yeah.
So it's a positive step.
So once again, stopping Sharon, I'm asking you, could you explain for a publisher who has not familiarized themselves with Inago reports, what it offers and how they can find more about it?
Inago reports, you just have to do a search on Inago reports at google.com. So Inago reports is our it's our technical check screening tools. So we're doing compliance checks, ethical checks, language checks, reference checks. There's a large number of checks on there. You can actually generate those AI-driven rules-based reports through in Argo reports, and it just saves you time and effort. And one of the use cases, for example, with the publisher that we're working with, is they're using it to identify anything that might reveal the name of the author
Right.
in a journal that has anonymized peer review. And that's really important because they want to reduce bias. So rather than manually checking the paper, which might take them half an hour to do, they can use our anonymization API through Argo reports, take them 15 seconds, if that. So
Excellent.
just a series of technical checks and screens.
Excellent. Thank you, Tony. Once again, switching back to the screen share and moving on to the next article. This is from a news item again in STM Publishing News. It is titled IEEE chooses Chronos Hub to deliver next generation publishing portal. We were just talking about Scholar One, and now we're talking about Chronos Hub. This portal will simplify publishing for researchers with a user-first approach, and it will integrate seamlessly with IEEE's existing systems, enhancing user experience. All participants, like authors, reviewers, and editors, will use a tailored dashboard for their own individual use cases, I suppose. And the system will streamline the process from manuscript preparation to publication. So excellent news. And I guess every submission system is eventually going to get, I guess, modified and sort of improved with all sorts of automation and such dashboards, so that the overall publishing process of right from submission until publication can be streamlined, and all the checks can be fitted in.
Yeah, I mean, and what this particular story highlights is the thing I mentioned earlier on about how Scholar One is a fantastic system, fantastic platform, really stable, works, but historically, and certainly in recent years, has had a lack of. It has been perhaps less flexible and less nimble in terms of what the additional services it can offer. So what publishers have started to do, and this is one example, I can think of at least 3 or 4 others, is to have like a staging post that sits between the author submission and the journal platform that allows a series of activities, checks, whatever it might be, to take place within the Scholar One, within the submission system environment, without them necessarily having to leave the environment. But it's actually that processing work is done elsewhere. But APIs in and APIs out.
Right.
From Scholar One back into Scholar One. So it's a great story. And I know this particular story quite well because I know the people at IEEE pretty well. It's an interesting development and one that is being followed by many others.
All right, moving on to the next one. It's a very sort of controversial thing. I was disappointed to know this, but it is a news article from Nature titled "The Pivot Penalty: Scientists Get Cited Less After Switching Fields, Analysis Finds." So as the title indicates, it is scientists who, I guess, interdisciplinary scientists will face more of it. For example, I've originally am from orthopedic surgery. If I were to go into, let's say, robotics or something like that, and I started publishing my research, I would have a penalty apparently. So it analyzes data from 26 million research papers. Scientists who switch fields receive fewer citations for their work. The larger the pivot from their original field, the fewer citations they receive. And this is referred to by the study called the as pivot penalty, and the analysis was motivated by the shift in focus to COVID-19 research during the pandemic, and scientists moving into new fields find it harder to have their paper published to begin with, and then there's a problem of receiving fewer citations. So Tony, why do you think this happens? And this should not happen, right?
I'm not sure I know the answer to this, really, KK. I mean, I suppose looking at it in practical senses. So let's say you're a condensed matter physicist and you pivot to mathematical physics. You've built your career, your reputation, your research papers, your citations in a given area. So you're known within your community. You then pivot to another area, although it may be still within the broad range of physics. You're not necessarily as well known and well respected. You know how people cite. They often cite the names, or they look at references to the names that they recognise first. And if you recognise a name in a given field, because you've seen papers from that author before, you're more likely to read that paper. I mean, I've got no empirical evidence to support that. So if you're new to an area, I don't know whether you're going to have the same level of priority or in the reader's mind as you were in an area where you already were established. I don't know. I mean, it's unfortunate, but unfortunately it's true that it takes time to build up a reputation within any subject area. So it'd be interesting to know whether that citation performance changes
Hmm.
over a period of time. So it might be low at the start with because they're new, but does it change after 5 years or 10 years?
But
And if we did that research again in 10 years' time, people who pivoted 20 years ago,
right.
are they still being cited less than they were in their original subject area?
But this begs the question. I mean, if this assumes, I mean, your hypothesis assumes that let's say Tony and KK know each other. Tony is a reputed, physicist, and KK is also in the same field. And when I mean, know each other in the sense in the academic sense, not like because you are friends and doing favors to each other. So just because KK knows Tony, Tony's papers are likely to be cited more by KK.
I
Is
know. I think I'm saying is, people are people, aren't they?
mm,
They'll look at the references, and the first thing they'll look at are the people that they've either met at conferences, or they've spoken to personally, or they've perhaps collaborated with in that same subject area. Yeah, I think you're naturally more drawn towards. I might be completely wrong, of
mm.
course. Um, I can't think of any other sort of factor that might influence that,
Right. I mean, this actually
apart from
brings me
human
to the
behavior.
no. Yeah. Yes. I mean, human behavior, all right, but the fact that we are increasingly consuming things digitally, and obviously the discovery tools. We just talked about some discovery tools earlier on in this episode itself, and these discovery tools should ideally present research that is scientifically robust, more robust, and it need not be only based on the name or the reputation of the author. So from that point of view, pivot penalty, in my opinion, should be less of a sort of a thing, considering that everything is moving digital and actual discovery systems exist, which will let researchers find things not based on just the reputation of the researcher or the institution that the research is published for. That's a point.
Or maybe it's just because once that author has pivoted, that research has pivoted to another area,
Mm,
the research that they're doing isn't quite so
mm.
pivotal in that new area as their previous research
Nice,
was.
nice, nice, nice word
But
play there.
it might change over time. I don't know. I
Right.
mean, it's one of these questions where I don't think there is any one answer really.
Mm. All right, moving on to the next story. It's a guest post on the Scholarly Kitchen, reading the tea leaves, I guess, of publishing speed, the cases of Hindavi, Frontiers, and PLOS. So it discusses the publishing speed of journals that I mentioned. Hindavi faced issues with turnaround times and operational inefficiencies, leading to significant reputational damage. Frontiers in oncology adjusts its processes after the Hindavi issues, putting more editorial checks in place, scrutiny in place, and PLOS once struggled with increasing submission volumes during the pandemic, affecting its peer review and production times. So the article highlights the importance of monitoring operational data to avoid crises and suggests balancing operational efficiency with safeguarding integrity, which brings me back to the point as in how things are. I do not think there will be a reversal of trends in terms of research output volumes. So we have to still figure out solutions for publishers and journals to improve in terms of scale and efficiency, and also have more automation for research integrity and maybe peer review
Yeah,
assistance as well.
absolutely. It's using tools like Inago reports, for example, to do those RI checks. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is an interesting time in historical analysis of what happened during the pandemic, or what some publishers had to go through until they sort of put more rigorous checks in place, is a good idea for all publishers to sort of keep in mind while they set up their own systems for the future.
And
Or
was it specifically during the pandemic or just generally?
this is
I didn't think
the
the criticism was.
one trend they noted was the shift in I mean, so the change in dynamics during the pandemic. We talked about the pandemic vis-a-vis the previous article as well, so
I
maybe
mean, there's no question that there were more papers were published during
mm,
the pandemic
yeah,
because more researchers were at home with nothing else to do apart from write up their research. So more papers were submitted and were published.
right. All right, moving on to the last main story. This is a career column, and I want to ask again, pick your brain. I want to ask Tony if you agree with this. This is titled "Your Time is Valuable. Do Not Give It Away Just for Exposure." So this is talking about a researcher in general, and the basic theme is that academia often involves, or academic work often involves unpaid work, which needs re-evaluation. The author shares a personal story of being asked for unpaid work, and many organizations offer exposure instead of payment. Sounds a lot like what happens for young musicians when they are sort of getting into the industry. Researchers should be cautious about accepting unpaid tasks, and unpaid work should align with personal values and be the exception. So this is the basic thesis, and I want to ask you: peer review is the classical unpaid task that peer reviewers, I mean reviewers, are doing. What do you think about this? This general sort of, I guess, the statement as well as in the context of peer review. What are your thoughts?
I don't think it's just academia that relies on unpaid labour. I think every sector
Mm-hmm.
relies on sort of good faith labour to take place. And so, you do things that might be slightly outside of your pay
Mm-hmm.
or your hours because you want to further your career. You want to create those networks. You want to create those relationships. You want to it want to enhance your skills. You want to be seen to be acting positively to build your career. You asked specifically about peer review, for example. The academic journals world, I think, generally is wholly reliant on free peer review,
Mm-hmm.
and then there needs to be ways of rewarding reviewers for the time. And we've seen things like reviewer credits and PubLaunch have come back, which have allowed for ways that the reviewers can be rewarded without necessarily paying them for the time that they do. You start introducing a cost
Mm-hmm.
in peer review for every single paper, that will put such a huge burden on those smaller societies, for example, and and then those costs will get then transferred to the users.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be unsustainable. However, I think there is kind of a role for paid peer review for insurance purposes, for example. So if you're struggling to find second reviewers and there's a deadline, if the only option is to then pay for a third-party reviewer to do the work, as long as it maintains all the standards and adheres to all the rules that you set for a peer reviewer, then it's, although it may not be a nice thing to consider, it's unfortunately it's probably an inevitable one. But as a kind of as a last resort rather than as a routine activity.
Mm-hmm. Did this come up? You presented the peer review assistant product that we're building. Did this come up as a pain point from a publisher point of view in the SSP annual meeting? Did
Not specifically around unpaid time for
Mm-hmm.
reviewers, but the time shortages and the
Mm-hmm.
ability to be able to manage an increasing workload, an increasing number of submissions comes up in every conversation that you have.
Yeah.
No good academic publisher is seeing volumes falling necessarily, and they need to find ways to be able to manage that increased volume and still maintain the quality of the publications that they're responsible for.
Right, and if you're interested in knowing, if you're a publisher, you're watching this, if you're interested in knowing more about our peer review assistant, please visit inago.com publishers. You'll find
Yeah,
all the details regarding peer review assistants, and we
and
are
also if you're a publisher that's interested in if you need that kind of that insurance measure, that kind of peer review service as a backup to what you're already doing, please feel free to contact me directly at tonio@inago.com. It's a service that we already provide.
All right. Moving on to quick hits, we have, I think, 5. The first one is a relatively straightforward one. IOP Publishing offers authors streamlined full text access across the web with a new Get FTR browser extension. And this free tool enhances visibility of authors and provides readers with a very easy access to trusted research, including guiding them to eventually the actual version of record that they should search. So it makes the reader's journey very easy, but also provides high quality research integrity flags, including retraction related information within the plugin itself. It's an excellent
Yeah.
news, and I'm happy that Get FTR is getting integrated into all publishers, individual sites, as well as we are also hoping to have Get FTR integrated into our products, including Inago
Yeah,
reports.
and I used to work for IP Publishing many years ago, and they've always. I mean, it's always been important for them to be pioneering in electronic publishing, and I think this is another example of that.
Right. Moving on to the next one, it is another story from STM Publishing News. It's titled Digital Science Makes Industry University Collaboration Easier with Dimensions Industry Partnership. So it's basically, this tool is aimed at innovation and economic development teams within universities, providing them with insights to improve their strategy and outreach. I guess it is a little to do with, like, I guess, marketing and self-promotion of the universities as well. But again, Dimensions, we have talked about it. I think in the last episode itself, it is one of those tools that one tends to have as a first subscription to have in terms of knowing where they stand, where universities stand. Your thoughts on it, Tony?
Uh, Again, we talked about the digital science story in the previous episode of PubShorts. This is an organisation that is creating high quality tools for all sectors of the research economy, and anything that will help build industry. University collaborations is a good thing. There are plenty of organisations out there who have been doing this for some time, But now they're creating automated ways of doing that. I think just makes everyone's life especially for working research managers so much easier.
Right, right. 1 second. Let me just pull up the next article. So this one is again from STM Publishing News. It is titled "Gender Pay Gaps Persist Among Leading Science Publishers." We've been talking about gender pay gaps every third episode, I think. But anyway, so it still is gender pay gaps exist, and the analysis was published by PLOS Global Public Health highlights discrepancies. Elsevier seems to have a significant pay gap between the genders, with little improvement over 8 years, and other publishers like Springer Nature and Wiley have made better progresses. The issue isn't the lack of qualified women, it is the environment and opportunities. That's what the article says. Commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion is crucial for progress, is also another comment in the article. My question to you, why do you think, I mean, is it a societal thing that is again manifesting at the publishing industry, or is it more than that? Is there a gender pay gap? I mean, is there a reason for a gender pay gap in publishing beyond what you see in society?
No, I can't imagine there's any pay gap. The same role will be salaried at the same level within publishers like this. And certainly when I'm talking to organisations like Elsevier, in many cases the most senior person is female. And I'd expect them to be on the same salary as a man would be at that role. Right. So I don't know the answer to that question, I'm afraid.
Right. And I mean, at least I am very passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I'm very, very proud to say that Trinka, the complete writing assistant, has DEI features, especially if you are interested in getting your manuscript compliant with DEI criteria by several journals. You can use it and to make sure that your manuscript and the text is compliant. Please check it out by visiting trinka.ai and finding more about the DEI checks within it. All right, Tony, moving on to the next one. This is, again, very interesting, from David Crotty from the Scholarly Kitchen writes this article. Is grammar an inherent product of the human brain? The answer, unfortunately, is yes, in my opinion, because I'm reading, we will get to that. But the article discusses a long-running debate about universal grammar, which is abbreviated as UG. The UG theory dates back to the 1950s and 1960s, sparked by Noam Chomsky. The article considers the impact of artificial intelligence on our understanding of human language. And this conversation is part of a larger conversation about how AI and language models function compared to human language. My question to you is this. I think I asked you a related question in another internal meeting that we had. What do you think? What do you think of the nature of human grammar and how AI solutions are trying to solve, in the sense, at least provide assistance for researchers primarily?
Well, AI tools are getting better at creating and editing the sort of text in the world that we're responsible for. However, there's still no AI tool that will match a human editor to the same level. They're getting better and better and better. The precision score is getting higher and higher, but there is still a role for human involvement. Right. And I think we're some way away. The point at which the AI actually delivers a better service than the human. So there's a balance between lower cost AI services or higher cost human services.
Right. The last quick hit that we have, JISC, right, and American Chemical Society, ACS. Yeah, renew partnership to enable open access publishing for researchers across the UK. So this agreement extends the full reading access to ACS journals and open access publishing services through 2025 and 2026. Well, it is great news for UK researchers, and I want to ask you, do you want to provide some context regarding JISC and how this story and related stories affect researchers in the UK?
So JISC have, since the late 90s, I think, through their various bodies. JISC is the Joint Information Systems
Committee.
Council, I think.
Committee.
I think so. Committee. So I beg your pardon. So they historically they were the UK higher education arm, the Department of Higher Education arm, which is to buy technology on behalf of universities. And then in the late 90s, early noughties, mid 90s, they sort of moved towards also licensing of content, license collection. So theirs is a national responsibility for all UK state-funded universities, where they facilitate access to content by negotiating deals with publishers. So you can't study chemistry. You can't study chemistry without having access to ACS. So I think it's absolutely important that they've done a deal here, or renew the deal here, because you can't study chemistry without having access to that material really easily. anyway, there are certain publishers I'd say that to, ACS, RSC, and a few others. It's absolutely cool. So they may just make possible things, and it means that universities can decide whether they buy in or opt in or opt out to these deals, and can manage those costs over a longer period of time, because those costs tend to be sort of guaranteed at a certain level. The prices are fixed or set for a period of time, to 2-3 years. So
Right.
yeah, it's another good example, but not wholly unsurprising.
All right, that brings us to the end of our episode. Episode 78 time is on my side. I hope that time is on our side, because I'm sure, Tony, you're probably going on a vacation for a few days.
I am, yes. I've got going away to take my wife away to somewhere in the Mediterranean. I won't say where. But it's going to be hot here and it's going to be hot there. So we're going to bring out suntan. And what about you, KK? What are you up to over the next few days?
Well, actually, the article that we just the scholarly kitchen article about the grammar thing. So I think I asked you whether you've read Steven Pinker. So I'm reading a book by his. It's a very famous book, How the Mind Works. It's published around in the late 90s, and it's a 600-700 page book, and I'm reading it on my Kindle, and it is basically a very, very good book if you are interested in knowing obviously how your mind works, but also about rational thinking, about how your brain sort of works, and your eyes are sort of creating an image, and not really, you're not seeing what you're actually sort of looking at. Actually, your brain is creating an image. But in line with that, wait, you had a point, you had a thought.
No,
Yeah.
I was going to say it highlights the difference between you and I. You're reading Steven Pinker's Thoughts on the Brain. I'm reading Record Collector magazine about record prices in the UK.
No, I think even I have things like that. But the question that I think I asked you in a previous conversation was whether you have ever come across this theory called the theory of complexity. This is one of the proponents of the theory is Stuart Kaufman, and I mean it actually challenges things like evolution. It's not flat Earth kind of theory. It is like basically all systems, the things that we know, including the universe, are so complex that they cannot be explained by if all these theories that we have. We need another theory, and that theory basically is the theory of complexity. And the basic argument, to simplify it, is that when you have sufficient complexity in a system, it will self-organize in a certain way, like how the universe is, like how our bodies are, our cells are. And I'm mind blown by this, and I've never come across this. And for the last several days, this is the only thing that is sort of working in my mind. I'm reading things about it. I plan to read the book by this Stuart Kaufman as well, related to this. And it is pretty sort of earth shaking for me, in the sense I'm a very rational. I would like to think that I'm a rational thinker and a skeptic. So I believe in the writings of Richard Dawkins, and obviously the theories of evolution and everything, including Steven Pinker, who's criticized and is vocally opposes the theory of complexity. But that's what I'm sort of in heaven. That's in my headspace.
So viewers to this podcast, if you're more interested in KK's theories on logical thinking and rational thinking, I urge you to sign up to PubShorts,
Yeah.
and where we will discuss this further, or not.
We may not, because it'll come up. I mean, look, the entire academic publishing industry is basically supporting such critical thinking to begin with, and the articles on places like the Scholarly Kitchen are such things anyway. So anyway, we inhabit this space, and I would love to, Tony, maybe you and I should eventually discuss some of the books that we've been talking about, when that we're reading, and maybe we will include that as part of one of our
Who knows, that day may come.
That day may indeed come. And once again, so for listeners who are listening in for the first time, PubShorts is I guess streamed on YouTube, and you can find all the previous 77 episodes on YouTube, the Inago YouTube channel, and we have a dedicated playlist for it. And please let us know what you think and what you would like us to cover. Maybe more book reviews and less STM publishing news. Maybe that's what you want. And if you want that, you can let us know, and Tony will shake his head, and we'll still continue to cover STM publishing industry news on PubShorts. And until that time, and wishing Tony and family and wife, I guess, a very happy vacation in Mediterranean. I'm jealous, I guess. Yes, I should be. And until the next time, this is Dr. KK signing off. Tony, we'll see you after the vacation. I hope you have a tan, I suppose.
Well, yes, maybe. Who knows? I'll put sun cream on. Yeah, have a good one. See you, Ron.
Bye bye.